The scrolls were found around 1947, 1948. In the midst of the Arab-Israeli difficulties. The war broke out in 48. The partition of Palestine was in November of 47. Now, the official story is that a shepherd was looking for sheep, a Bedouin shepherd. I think his name was Muhammad Bib. But really, he was a known treasure hunter. And he was not a boy. He was around 35 years old. And I don't think he was really looking for sheep. He was looking for things. And he would throw rocks in the caves and things like that, I'm sure, to see if he find something. But it was a nice story. People bought that story. They liked that story. A shepherd in the fields and the manger and so on, looking for sheep and lost sheep and so on. This was down by the Dead Sea, and he was tending his flocks. But I think it was known that he was someone who looked for things. Anyway, one of these times, he, with some others, threw a rock in the cave. I don't think there was one of his sheep was in there, or goats or whatever he was herding. That's the official story, but I'm not sure about that. In any case, instead of hearing just clatter, 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 usually you would hear for a rock. There's lots of books that tell this story. You don't have to have a specific one. He heard kaplunk, kaplunk, and crashing or breaking pop. This turned out to be what we call Cave 1. Cave 1 of the Dead Sea Scrolls. We number the caves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. By the date in which they were found and whether they contain manuscripts. Because people only really worry about manuscripts. It turned out to be 11 caves, we think, that had manuscripts. The last one was discovered around 1966. But we don't even know that the last one did bear some of the manuscripts that they say were there. That was called Cave 11. We have a code for this. 1Q. And then that means it was the first Qumran cave. This is the code that scholars devise, the official team as it turned out ultimately. S. S is for Hebrew Sarachayah, which means community rule. So there were, I think, 10 or some number, 12, I don't know, 13 documents found in Cave 1. They were in a very good state of preservation. They were actually in jars, but some of the jars have been broken, and there are actually broken jars, and I'll explain that to you. It's been found probably previously, materials from Cave 1. The thing was in Cave 2, 3, 4, 5. For instance, the Copper Scroll is Cave 3. Copper Scroll is on exhibition down in San Diego. I'm supposed to take a group down there Wednesday. A couple of people wanted to meet us there. I suppose they could tag along if they were in front of that museum there. We're supposed to meet at 11:15 in the morning, but I can't promise anything. If you are definitely interested in it, I can discuss it with you after the class here, but I couldn't bring more than 4 or 5 along probably. They're being hosted by a group that has invited me. I wouldn't go down if it wasn't, I wouldn't go near it if it wasn't, I hadn't been invited with being hosted that. In any event, that's one of the documents on display there with some other documents that my good friends here have already seen and showed me the catalog and so on, what they have there. So that would be 3Q. I don't know the abbreviation for the copper scroll, but anyway, let's just say C or something like that. Habakkuk Pesher, commentary on the prophet Habakkuk, 1QPHAB, 1Q Pesher Habakkuk. Pesher means commentary in Hebrew, so that's one of the most important documents. 1Q Pesher HAB. Now, since these things are in columns, they're rolled. 1 column, 2 column, 3 column. I told you all this before. They're parchment usually. Some are. There are also some other kinds of materials there, but mostly it's parchment, which is leather, treated leather from animals. And you can see them sewed. They'll be skins sewed together. You see the stitching mark on the documents, and there'll be a whole row of materials. Well, that's really not how it would be. It would be more like that. But then there'd be columns here. You get about 3 or 4 columns on each skin. Only Hebrew goes this way. And so if you want to say, for instance, 1Q Pesher Habakkuk, that's 7th column, 3rd line. 7th column, 3rd line. There are many different ones of this Damascus document. We'll put A, B, C, D, found in K4, 4Q Damascus document. The most important, probably, document in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But there's also another one. What does that mean? CD. Cairo Damascus document. You guys don't see, you're really angry at me, aren't you? You keep looking at me with the evil eye. Are you okay now? You're going to calm down? Good. I hope you're not all worked up still. Don't ever cross anybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You'll get paid back in spades. Anyway, I think I'm a nice guy, actually. I'm gentle with you folks. You know, some people say my bark is bigger than my bite. So I think I'm generous as well. But I may not be. I just, make myself crazy. But in any event, that would be the Cairo Geza document of the Damascus Covenant. Now I'm going to praise myself for a minute here. You see, one of the things that drove us to open the scroll thing was, I went to Jerusalem in 85, 86. I told you, I guess I interrupted that story, I got this call from Michael Baigent at the Auburn Institute when I was there. The ones who'd written we got on the legal things to tell me about their legal suit that they, and then I got to do legal things. But he had called me when I was there. I told you there was a Belgian professor at this university who already showed me Holy Blood, Holy Grail. I got this call when I was there late in the 1985 at the Albright. This is Michael Baigent. You don't know me, but we've read your work and blah, 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 blah. And when this Belgian guy had given me the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, I read the thing through. I said, oh yeah, well, it's an interesting book, a bit speculative and so on, but their chapter on the Dead Sea Scrolls is really pretty good, really quite good. And if they had read my work, it probably would have blown their mind, you know. And so this phone call rings, and I didn't recognize his name, because I didn't take it in, you know, it was a long distance call for me. And he said to me, yeah, well, you know, we're so-and-so, we write books in this area, blah, blah. I said, yeah, okay, right. And then he said, you know, we're the authors of Holy Blood, Holy Ground. I said, oh God, I know why you called. He said, why? And I told him a story about this professor who just passed away last year, really nice fellow, a guy called Pierre Aprocrypha in the French department here. One of the, they should have an honor scroll of the people that teach here. It's just like the war scroll, and they should put them on a wall, just like in Washington D.C., so people don't forget them. I mean, they've done their service here. They should be commemorated, but nobody does commemorate anybody. They just old soldiers pass away, and that's it. But there's a lot of people who passed away here that I have seen go. They should be commemorated, but nobody does anything. I said that to the deans and the presidents once. And they looked at me like I was a donut. In any event, I said, I know why you called me. He said, oh, yeah, why? I said, well, I read your book and I read your on the scrolls, and I said, if you read my work, it'll blow your mind. He said, yeah, we just read your work, and you're right, it blew our minds. And I said, well, okay, cool. And I said, you know, we're having writer's block at the moment, and we're doing this other book called, we don't have a title for it, but a follow-up book, and we want to come and talk to you. I said, okay, fine, go. A day later, he was at my doorstep with his wife. He had flown out from England in one day. He was a really nice fellow, and we got to be pretty good friends, but he titled that book Messianic Legacy, the second book, follow-up book if you follow their work, because, and that really came out of the work I was doing, because I call this, excuse me, I call this literature, the literature of the Messianic movement in Palestine. That was a unique position that I had to put forth in my work, so he knew that this is what I was talking about. The literature of the Dead Sea Scrolls was the literature of the Messianic movement in Palestine. So they called that second book Messianic Legacy. Anyway, he didn't use a lot of my stuff in that, but then when the Dead Sea Scroll Deception came, they really did. By that time we had been working together, he'd come out on these digs, and he even came to classes here at Cal State Long Beach, sat in these classes. Well, that was a pretty good seller at Dead Sea Scroll Deception, and still is selling quite well. I have no objections to that book because it put my name way out there, I mean like way out there, and also made a lot of people hate me all the more because other scholars don't like it when your name gets way out there, you know, and so on and so forth, but it made it possible for me to publish just about anything I write, so I'm not really against it. I mean, there's very few people, even at this university, that can probably make that claim that anything they write can get published. And I think the Messianic, the Dead Sea Scroll Deception did that for me. So that is certainly true. In any event, so we had, and that's covered in that book too, because I fed him all this information. We wrote the head of the Qumran Publishing Committee at that time, a person called John Strugnell, who was later removed by the Israelis for various reasons, which I don't want to get into again in this setting. But it's been adequately covered everywhere, in many places, including the mutual toasts we gave each other in the garden of the Albright. So when he drank to Kurt Waldheim, I said, will you drink to one that I proposed? He said yes, basically he would. I said, okay, I think of who would really anger him. And I thought, and I said, I want to drink to Ord Wingate. And he knew who Ord Wingate was, even though a lot of you probably wouldn't. Ord Wingate was the youngest major general in the British Army in World War II. He fought in Burma in the Chindan campaign. He, in the 1930s, had wanted to lead a Jewish army. He'd been in Palestine, and he started what was called the Night Raiding Squads to protect the pipelines in Palestine of Jewish soldiers from the kibbutz. He laid the foundations for the Israeli army. He was a kind of Jewish T. Lawrence. I knew that Strugnell would know who this was. And he died an honorable death. He died in an American B-25 with an American crew because Roosevelt and Churchill had given him American pilots and American supplies to drop behind the lines to the Chindit campaign in Burma. And that plane crashed with all its crew. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery because they couldn't separate the remains of the American crew from him. And he's there buried in Arlington National Cemetery as a heroic person, whatever you think of him. He was banned from Palestine in the 1930s by the British government, who thought that he was too friendly with the Jews. And he always wanted to go back and lead a Jewish army. And he was a Plymouth Brethren. He was an evangelical Christian, and he loved the Bible, and he always read the Bible and took it literally. And when he went down to Ethiopia, and he was the only victorious British general in World War II at that time, in 1940, 41, 42, when the British were having all of the reverses, he led a guerrilla army where he brought some of his Israeli kibbutz assistants down with him and others. They led a guerrilla campaign among the tribes in Ethiopia and defeated the Italians in Ethiopia and restored Haile Selassie to the throne of Ethiopia. And when he came back to Cairo after that, he thought he'd done enough for the British cause that he would be allowed to go back to Palestine and raise a Jewish army to help a Jewish unit in the British army. And they refused to let him. And he tried to commit suicide in his hotel room. He cut his throat with a bayonet. And he was only found by somebody, and they banished him now to some artillery thing in the wilds of England. And then when they needed help in the Indian campaign, where they thought he couldn't cause any trouble, they sent him out there as the only guy who could do guerrilla warfare. And he rose ranks. He went behind the Japanese lines, brought troops in there, and so on and so forth. Chindit Campaign 1, Chindit Campaign 2. It's a famous guerrilla campaign. It's the basis of what they do now with the strategic, the kind of forces we have that go behind the lines.
Reconnaissance?
More than that. I forget what it's called. Special forces. Special forces type of people. So anyway, I knew he'd know who he was. And he took his glass and knocked it down on the table and said, "No, I will not drink to that traitor." Now, those were his very words.
Or were they?
So, let's go back to the Damascus document. So we wrote him a letter, Davies and me. I wrote it, but Davies signed it too. And, I had gone to Israel, the Albright, that year to work on the Damascus, to work on the parallels of the James Jerusalem community and the Dead Sea Scrolls community. And I found there was nothing else nothing I could do there. And had I known that the scrolls were here in California at the Huntington Library, all the pictures of them, there were 4 different locations, but the Huntington Library was one of them. That's another story. I might as well just have stayed here. But anyway, at that time I didn't know these things. And but I had, someone at the Israel Antiquities Authorities had given me a computer printout of all the pictures of what was in the Antiquities Authority, of all the unpublished photographs and their numbers and everything. And I was like astonished. And I sent these in 1987 in a Xerox copy to Herschel Shank's office. And Herschel Shanks, someone in his office at the time, he never acknowledged my having sent him this. At the time said that you couldn't believe the reaction when that catalog came in of all the unpublished manuscripts, and that triggered his campaign to start freeing the scrolls. You can say that's baloney or not, but that's the absolute truth. I had all the numbers of the plates and everything. Someone had taken pity on me because I'd gone in to look at the Damascus document. So I knew the exact numbers of the Damascus document parallels in the K4 documents. Now, the point is that we wanted to know what in the Cairo Geniza document of these things was paralleled in the Qumran versions. And for 30, 40 years, we hadn't been able to see anything. And they weren't interested, so they didn't show it to us. And so Strugnell said, oh, yeah, fine. You people live in the land of the lotus eaters or something like that. He wrote back something like that to us, some silly sort of, just sort of shrugged us off, basically. And that's when we, that's when we really, that's when things really started rolling after that letter that we wrote officially asking for access to those documents and being rejected. We were actually going to take it to the High Court of Israel. In fact, ultimately, we got taken to the High Court of Israel. Anyway, so the Damascus Document, let me explain what the Damascus Document was. Let's take a 5-minute break here. Come back at 9. You can change the reservoir here, Michael. And then I'm not going to take long.